The pen trembled in her hand as the ink bled into the paper, blurring the line between obligation and despair. Tears splashed onto the contract, dotting her signature like silent confessions she wasn't allowed to speak out loud. Around her, the private office was painfully quiet, no witnesses, no applause, no protest. Just a woman selling her future to survive the present. She had sworn she would never do this. Yet here she was, signing a marriage agreement that felt more like a surrender. She didn't notice his eyes soften as she stood up to leave. She didn't hear him whisper her name like a question. All she knew was that her life, as she understood it, had just ended. Lina had always believed love was something you earned through patience and kindness. She grew up watching her mother endure a cruel marriage, learning early that survival sometimes came before happiness. When her mother fell ill and the hospital bills began to pile up like threats, Lina worked 2 jobs, then 3, until exhaustion became her normal state. Still, it wasn't enough. The final blow came when the bank sent the foreclosure notice. 3 weeks. That's all they had left. When the offer arrived, cold, precise, almost absurd, she laughed at first. A contract marriage, 1 year, clear boundaries, generous compensation, no love involved. By the end of the week, laughter had turned into tears, and tears into ink. Ethan Hale was not the villain she expected. He was wealthy, yes, painfully so. But he wasn't cruel, or loud, or arrogant in the way she'd imagined. He spoke carefully, as if every word had weight. His reasons were simple and complicated at the same time. His grandfather's final wish was to see him settled before handing over control of the family company. Ethan had tried to resist, but family expectations were chains forged from guilt and duty. A real relationship would take time he didn't have. A fake one would solve everything. He never expected the woman across the table to look like she was drowning. Their marriage ceremony was small and sterile, more legal procedure than celebration. Lina wore a simple dress she'd borrowed, her smile practiced and hollow. Ethan watched her from a distance, unease settling in his chest. This was supposed to be clean. Simple. Yet something about the way she flinched when the vows were spoken made him feel like he'd crossed a line he couldn't see. When they posed for photographs, she stood stiffly at his side. When his hand brushed hers, she pulled away without thinking. The cameras didn't capture that moment, but he felt it all the same. Living together was the first real challenge. The house was large and quiet, filled with echoes Lina didn't know how to fill. She stayed in her room, kept to herself, grateful for the strict clauses in the contract that promised privacy and independence. Ethan respected those boundaries, maybe too much. Days passed with polite nods and short conversations. Nights were lonelier than she expected. She missed the chaos of her old life, the noise, the struggle, the certainty of knowing who she was fighting for. Here, everything felt suspended, like she was holding her breath in someone else's dream. Slowly, almost against her will, small moments began to crack the wall between them. Ethan noticed she skipped meals and started leaving food outside her door without comment. Lina discovered he worked late not out of ambition, but fear of disappointing people who only valued results. One evening, a storm knocked out the power, plunging the house into darkness. Lina panicked, memories of hospital hallways flooding back. Ethan found her sitting on the floor, shaking, and without thinking, he sat beside her. He didn't ask questions. He didn't offer solutions. He just stayed. It was the first time she felt safe since signing her name. The unexpected kiss happened on an ordinary night. No candles, no music, just exhaustion and honesty. They were standing in the kitchen, arguing quietly about nothing and everything, about why she wouldn't let him help more, about why he kept pretending this didn't affect him. Lina's voice broke as she accused him of not caring. Ethan snapped back that caring was the problem. The silence that followed was heavy and raw. Before either of them could think better of it, he leaned in, not with confidence, but hesitation. The kiss was brief, imperfect, and entirely unplanned. When they pulled apart, Lina's eyes were wide with shock. Ethan looked like he'd just crossed a line he'd sworn to protect. That kiss changed everything because it made pretending impossible. Lina spent the night staring at the ceiling, heart racing, wondering if she'd betrayed herself by wanting more. Ethan barely slept, replaying the moment over and over, realizing that the woman he'd hired had somehow become the one person who saw him clearly. The next morning, the contract felt heavier than ever. They avoided each other for days, each afraid to name what had been awakened. Trouble arrived in the form of truth. Ethan's grandfather, sharper than he appeared, began to sense something off about their marriage. A single question, asked gently over tea, made Lina's hands shake. "Do you love my grandson?" The room held its breath. Lina wanted to lie, she owed them that much. But she couldn't. She answered honestly, saying she didn't know what love was supposed to feel like anymore. The old man smiled sadly, seeing far more than she'd said. That night, guilt consumed her. She couldn't build her future on someone else's illusion. Lina decided to leave. She packed quietly, heart aching, convinced that stepping away was the only way to reclaim her dignity. Ethan found her suitcase by the door and finally broke. He told her about his fear of real connection, about how the contract had been a shield, and how she had shattered it without trying. Lina confessed that she'd signed in tears because she felt worthless, because she believed she had nothing else to offer the world. They stood there, both exposed, both trembling. Ethan tore the contract in half. The sound was loud in the silent house. He told her she was free to go, not because he didn't care, but because he finally did. The choice had to be hers. Lina wept then, not from despair, but from relief. For the first time, someone had given her freedom instead of taking it. She stayed, not as his wife by agreement, but as a woman choosing her own heart. They rebuilt slowly. No labels, no promises they couldn't keep. Love didn't arrive like a miracle, it grew through shared mornings, honest conversations, and the courage to be vulnerable. When Ethan's grandfather passed, he left the company to Ethan without conditions, writing only one line in his will: "Choose the life that makes you brave." Ethan knew exactly what that meant. A year later, Lina stood in the same office where she'd once signed away her future. This time, there were no tears, no contracts, just a simple ring and a question asked with hope instead of desperation. She said yes, not because she needed saving, but because she had learned she was worthy of love that didn't come with terms and conditions. The story didn't end with wealth or grand gestures. It ended with two people who had faced their fears and chosen honesty over safety. Lina learned that survival doesn't have to cost you your soul. Ethan learned that love isn't a weakness, it's a risk worth taking. And that unexpected kiss, born from truth and frustration, became the moment that turned a transaction into a transformation, reminding them both that even broken beginnings can lead to something real, something lasting, and something beautifully free.